Okay, welcome back. GMT's U.S. Civil War. We are starting turn 2. And we start with the reinforcement phase. That's at the beginning of every turn. And we're going to start with Union reinforcement, and then we'll go through Confederate reinforcement. So to start off with, Union forces get 6 SP in the east. All right, the rules for placement are they must be placed in a Union state and a resource hex that is in full supply. So I would like to get some guys into Harper's Ferry, but unfortunately, Harper's Ferry is in a southern state, so I can't place there, but I am going to place them into DC. So all 6 are going into DC, and then I'm able to distribute during the rail movement phase, or the reinforce, or the strategic movement phase. Next, we have 3 SP to be placed in Ohio or Indiana. Since we still do not have West Virginia under our control yet, I'm going to go ahead and place all 3 into Zanesville, Ohio. Next, we have 3 that get placed somewhere in Illinois. I'm going to go ahead and place those 3 into Springfield. And then finally, for the Trans-Mississippi Theater, there's 2 SP that get placed into St. Louis. Next, we can place or upgrade 1 fort. It's always a good idea for the Union to upgrade Washington, D.C. as quickly as possible, so we'll go ahead and upgrade that. So I've got a level 2 fort. I'm going to put it on this construction side on Washington, D.C. to signify that that is being worked on. And basically, that fort becomes active at the end of the Union action phase during the first action phase of turn 2. And then to finish out the reinforcement phase, the Union will normally draw 2 special action cards. But since there is a special rule for 1861, only 1 special action card is drawn. So go ahead and mark that there. All right, that's the completion of the Union reinforcement segment. Now we'll do the Confederate reinforcement segment. And the first step is to upgrade 1 resource hex by 1 point. And what we'll do is we'll roll 2d6 here, and that'll tell us what state the resource hex gets increased. Ten. Looking at the chart, 10 is Tennessee. There's a number of options that we could do. Nashville, Memphis, Chattanooga, Knoxville. I'm going to go ahead and select Chattanooga because that's kind of buried a little bit deeper than the rest. You know, depending on how, especially with the Kentucky stuff goes, Nashville and Memphis are a little exposed. Chattanooga is a little more protected, a little bit deeper down. So place the marker in Chattanooga, and the BP marker on the status track is increased by 1 to 2, since there are 2 arsenals on the board. The next step of the Confederate reinforcement segment is determining the number of SPs the Confederates receive. And the Confederates receive reinforcements based upon a formula. And it's not actually, the formula looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. So down here, if we look and see, basically the number of arsenals, border state, and blockade running, and then whatever the maintenance is, which starting maintenance is always 10. And then you divide that total number by 10 to give you the number of SPs. So then the SPs are distributed relatively equally through the Confederate states. So I'll go and work up that number, and we'll get right back to you. All right. Having worked through the Confederate reinforcement table, they're going to end up getting 12 SP for this reinforcement phase. Looking at the chart, they start with 100 points, or start at 100 numbers. The Union control 3, so that drops it down to 97. They do have 2 Arsenal BPs that have been built this turn, so by this point of the turn. So that brings them back up to 99. Regarding border states, it only counts for objective hexes in Kentucky or Missouri. Since they control Springfield, they get a +3 bonus for that. Each Missouri or Kentucky, the maximum they could provide is 9. But since they only have 1, so you could theoretically get a total of 18 between the 2 of them, but they've only got 3 for that Springfield, Missouri. Then you also add blockade runners. And you roll for each C zone, 1 time, 1d6, then you add the number to the die roll. We're in 1861. And right now the bonuses are pretty high for the Confederates because the Federals have to start capturing Confederate ports in order to start reducing those bonuses. So turn 1 usually, the reinforcements for turn 2 usually Confederates are pretty decent. They ended up rolling a 5 on a die with a +8, then a 1 on a die with a +7, then a 5 on a die with a +5. So that ended up giving them an additional 28 build points. So adding all those numbers together, you got 130. And then there's always a maintenance cost. At the start of the game, the maintenance cost is 10. It increases as the game, or can increase as the game progresses. Basically, that's supposed to take into account inflation and just generic frictions that happen within the economy, stuff like that. Bringing it down to 120, divided by 10, Confederates get 12. Hey, this is Editor James. Just wanted to do a quick insert while talking about the build points that Confederates get for calculating their reinforcements, and talking about Kentucky. Kentucky is neutral at the start of the game, which means that it does not benefit any Union or the Confederates. The Confederates don't get extra build points for it. The Union can't do control or anything like that through it. But one of the questions you might have as the Union is, hey, why don't I just capture or move into Kentucky right at the beginning? Well, the only real note about Kentucky neutrality is a note in kind of the suggestions of play for the Confederates saying, hey, Kentucky becomes Union controlled automatically on turn 4. On turn 3, you might as well invade, especially capturing the easy Columbus, Kentucky and Bowling Green, Kentucky, because you can just get those 6 quick BPs and not worry about it, which is true. But there's nothing really said about why the Union should not invade Kentucky and why they should do everything they possibly can to avoid moving into Kentucky. And the biggest reason has to do with those BPs. Because as talking about the border states, for each objective hex in the border states, which are basically the big cities, the black filled in dots, or like Louisville, which is an outline of a city, the Confederates get 3 build points up to a maximum of 9. So let's pretend on turn 1, the Union sitting in Cincinnati decide to cross the river and just grab Covington right away. Well, the Confederates will automatically get 9 build points added to their numbers because the entire state automatically switches to Confederate control. So the Confederates will get all those 9, the full 9 build points, basically until the Union captures enough of those objective hexes to start knocking down those build points. And, looking at our numbers, depending on where this is inserted, the Confederates getting 12 SP for their reinforcements this turn. That 9 extra build points wouldn't have been enough to give an extra SP, but it would be enough to maintain that 12 SP threshold a lot longer as the Union player captures other resource hexes throughout the Confederacy, those 9 BPs are helping the Confederates out. Because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 resource hexes in Kentucky. That's 21 build points, even though the Confederates get a maximum of 9. The Confederates would have to capture 5 of those objective hexes in order to start cutting into the benefit that the Confederates would get. And considering how spread out Kentucky is, and looking at the turn track and the rate of capture that the Union player has to maintain from turn to turn, that's a lot of effort that would be spent and essentially wasted in Kentucky instead of focusing elsewhere to try to capture objective resources that would have an immediate impact on the Confederates' ability to get reinforcements. Whereas Kentucky, they would have to capture at least 5 just to make sure that the Confederates aren't getting the bonus that they would otherwise not be getting. So as a Union player, do absolutely everything you can to not go into Kentucky. There may be a situation, there may be times where certainly it's worth the hit to jump into Kentucky, but Kentucky is going to become automatically Union controlled anyways on turn 4. I just wanted to mention that. It was something that didn't, I think it's implicitly stated or kind of implicitly understood within the rules, but it's not explicitly said anywhere, and I haven't seen any other videos talking about it. So I just wanted to make a mention here for people who are new to the game and kind of watching me explain my thought process as I talk about stuff. For the most part, I think on the surface you look at it and be like, oh, it's Confederate controlled, so what, who cares, You need to just move in and start gobbling stuff up. Well, that's, takes a lot of effort and resources to basically undo the damage that would be done if the Union invades Kentucky early. So anyways, hopefully I made that point clear, and back to the rest of the video. Thanks. 1 SP is always placed in the Trans-Mississippi Theater, assuming the Trans-Mississippi Theater is available or has a spot available. In this case, we're going to put it in Fayetteville, leaving 11 SP left. So the 11 SP are divided equally between the west and the east, with the balance going towards the east. So the east will get 6 SP, and the west will get 5. And you have to put no more than 2 per state. So with the 5 in the west, we're going to start with 2 in Tennessee. Let's go Memphis. 2 in Mississippi. Corinth or Holly Springs, let's go Corinth. And then finally 1 more for the west. Let's go Talladega. We'll give Ricky Bobby some love. Actually, let's change that out. Let's do Atlanta. We'll put 1 in Atlanta. All right, so that leaves us 6 for the east, and it's going to be 2, 2, and 2. And real quick, just to zoom in here, this red dotted line is the demarcation between Eastern Theater and Western Theater. So Atlanta is sitting in the Western Theater. That does mean that you could have 1 more SP go into Georgia, because each state can only have a maximum of 2. So you could put 1 more in Georgia here, but it would have to be on the Eastern Theater side of the line. So reinforcements on the Eastern Theater, 2 in Fredericksburg, 2 in Wilmington, North Carolina, and then 2 in Just go 2 in Charleston right there. And then finally, to finish up the Confederate reinforcement segment, draw 1 special action card. Now we move on to the strategic movement phase. Union player moves first. And we start with strategic rail movement. The Union can move 12 SPs basically anywhere along a connected rail line. We know we wanted to move some of the troops in DC up to Harper's Ferry, so we'll go ahead and do that. That'll turn that into 6 into Harper's Ferry. So we have 9 more to go. I'm going to move these 3 in Zanesville to Morgantown. So we have 6 more to go. I'm going to move the 3 from Springfield into with Fremont. So we have 3 more to go. I'm going to take these 2 that are in Baltimore. They're going to join McDowell in Alexandria. One more we're going to take, let's see, we've got 6, there's 6 though. He's the most he can move. He's a 2-star general, so he can't move anymore. So we might as well move 1 SP from Harrisburg into DC. All right, that's the end of rail movement. Next, strategic river movement. 3 SPs can be moved if they're along controlled rivers. To the best of my knowledge, there isn't a prohibition from the Union making a river movement along the Ohio River that would affect Kentucky neutrality. Yes, the only rule is that it may not enter rivers completely within Kentucky, since the Ohio River borders Kentucky and northern controlled states. This should be allowed to do so. So you move from port to port. So we're going to take Cincinnati. Basically, we're going to pick these 3 guys up here, and we'll move them all to Cairo. And it is pronounced Cairo, not Cairo. All right, those are the 3 river movements. Ocean movement, there is no ocean movement, especially in 61. So next we got a strategic road movement. Basically 1 SP per theater can be moved anywhere, as long as it hasn't already been moved. So 1 SP in St. Louis. Is going to reinforce Lyon just outside of Springfield. Now 1 SP in Columbus, Ohio. I'm debating whether to send them to Cairo or just on the other side of the river from Wheeling. He wouldn't be able to cross into Wheeling because he has to stay within his theater. Well, I think getting West Virginia is the impetus, so we're going to go do that. So what I'm going to do is just across from Wheeling. And then finally, Eastern Theater, there isn't any strategic movement there. Pretty much everyone has moved where they need to be. All right. Before doing the Confederate strategic movement phase, I did forget, right before strategic movement, there's also a second segment to return things or units and leaders and the displaced box back onto the board. So the only thing that's in the displaced box right now is West Virginia, the West Virginia militia. I think pop up in Grafton. They're not really they're 0 points, so they're not gonna do anything, but they're on the board to provide moral support. And then actually also, the Missouri militia, they're gonna pop up. The only place they can come to is Springfield. So again, they're not gonna provide anything except for moral support. So, all right, on to Confederate strategic movement. The Confederates are more restricted on their strategic movement. They only get 7 rail points, or 7 movement points on rail, 1 for river and 1 for road. Again, they do get the 1 per theater for the road. So this is basically where the Confederates have to spend their time consolidating all of their stuff into Virginia. So, Beauregard's a 2-star, so he can command up to 6. So we'll move 2 from Fredericksburg via rail up to Manassas. That brings 5 there. We'll go ahead and bring the 1 from Atlanta as well, bringing that total to 6, which is Beauregard's command maximum. But the Confederates have 4 more they can move. I'll go ahead and bring 4 more, 2 from Wilmington and 2 from Charleston up to Johnson, bringing his total to 6. So they're kind of split between defending between the Army of the Potomac and up there in the east. So that is the end of Confederate rail movement. Confederate river movement, we do have an SP available in Memphis that could move, but he doesn't really have anywhere I need him to go. So I think that'll be good for that. So then we'll just go to road movement. East Coast has, we have this 1 in Charleston. You know, we'll take this 1 in Charleston and we'll go ahead and put them up into Grafton, giving 2 up there. Hold on to that. That is East Coast, so that's good there. West, we'll go ahead and move the 1 from Corinth into Memphis. And then finally in the Trans-Mississippi, this guy in Fayetteville, just kind of give Price some support. That is the end of Confederate strategic movement. Now we'll move to the leader management phase. All right, leader management in this game is determined by the turn track. Leaders will be added and required as dictated according to the turn track. Now, I know I had previously mentioned that I was contemplating leaving Lion in a turn later than he would normally be, especially considering the new setup and the way things were, but looking and reviewing my movement as the Union player, I did have the ability initially to be able to use Lion during turn one before he'd be removed by the turn track. I didn't initially recognize that, so I'm chalking that up as a mistake on the Union player's part, which, you know, hey, there was a lot of issues with the Union leadership at the beginning of the war, right? So I have decided that because it was possible for Lion to have been involved during turn one, but due to the player's decision, he didn't, that I'm going to abide by the turn chart, and Lion will be removed as posted on the turn chart. And we could say that, I don't know, he got kicked off his horse and bumped his head and died, or got shot by a wife's lover or something crazy like that. I don't know. We could make up the story however we want. But regardless, he's going to get removed from the game. So, turn to leader phase. First thing we do is we demote McDowell. McDowell failed in his attack against the Confederates at Bull Run. He gets demoted. Here's McDowell's starting side. Token gets flipped over. Here's McDowell's demoted side. All right. McClellan gets promoted plus a transfer. Here's McClellan's starting side. Here's McClellan's promoted side. Gets a transfer to the Army of the Potomac. All right, next, Halleck comes onto the board. Halleck is a 3-star general, hesitant. He gets placed in the west. He will take command of the troops in Cairo. Next, we remove Lion. Our boy is dead, replaced with Curtis. Curtis is a 2-star 114. So not as good on the attack as Lion would have been, but that's the way it goes. Burnside comes onto the field in the east. So looking at the mess that is the Eastern Theater. Burnside being a 114. I'm going to bring him on here in Morgantown. Help retake Grafton. McClellan is here with the Army of the Potomac. And McDowell, who is a 014, I'm going to transfer him with Patterson because 1-star and 2-star generals get a transfer for free. They can transfer anywhere. So I'm going to put McDowell, even though he doesn't have an attack value, he does have a defense value in case the Confederates get squirrely up there by Herbert's Ferry. And I'm going to bring Patterson back to D.C. All right, looking at the Confederates. General James Longstreet comes on the field. He is a 1-star general. We'll go ahead and put him with Johnson. Well, let's see. I think the bigger stack actually is here. We'll put him with Beauregard. He is subordinate to Beauregard right now, even though Beauregard doesn't have enough SP because Beauregard can't command more troops than he already has, as far as the movement goes. But on the defense, if there's more there, then they can be used. So we're going to put Longstreet there. Next we have good old Albert Sidney Johnston. He comes into the west. He will arrive in Memphis because that's where our largest force is at the moment. Stuart as a cavalry general. You know, as a cavalry general normally, and he can only move 1 SP, but there's more than one here, so he doesn't get his full bonus. But I'm going to go ahead and put him in Grafton anyways. And then finally, Hardy. 1-star general. We'll go ahead and plop him in Nashville. Right there. All right, that is the conclusion of the reinforcement, strategic movement, and leader action phase. We're moving on to action phase 1, which we will do in another video. But now we need to roll to see who has initiative. Confederates have initiative. With a differential of 3. All right, there we go. That concludes our pre-turn 2 action phase. It's reinforcement, strategic movement, leader, management, but maybe we could just cut it down to we have completed the RSL phase of turn 2. There we go, we'll start calling it that, RSL. We have concluded turn 2 RSL phase. All right, we'll catch you in the next video, guys. See ya, bye.